Good evening. I'm Professor 219. I teach an online class on how to survive as a conservative in today's messed up America. You don't need to know my real name. A few of you do know my real name. And there's been some confusion lately about a group called the MAGA Patriot Party because somebody with a name very, very similar to my real name is one of the high ranking executives with that organization. Uh, Donald Trump has disavowed any link to this new political party, and so am I. Um, I wish them well, but I don't have anything to do with them. Another thing that has come up is my observations about Sha'carri Richardson in our last class session. I actually support the legalization of marijuana for recreational use and for medicinal use. I have supported it since I was a high school kid, since I was in 8th grade. And I've always been a conservative. I'm a lifelong conservative Christian Republican. I believe that legalizing cannabis is consistent with conservative principles of individual liberty. Cannabis smokers aren't hurting anybody. It's a non-addictive drug. It isn't really, in my opinion, a drug. You can't overdose on it. You've never heard of anybody overdosing on it. Nobody could smoke that much weed. Okay? You'd have to sit and smoke 2 pounds of it, really high grade stuff, in order to overdose on it. And by the time somebody got to the 4th joint, they would have lost their lighter and ordered pizza and fallen asleep next to the dog. Marijuana is harmless compared to other drugs that is classified with by the federal government in terms of narcotics. Or schedule this, schedule that. Come on, okay? Regulate it and tax it like alcohol. Many states are already doing this, and it's one of the more sane things that you can get from the Democratic Party. On some things, on a very few things, the Democratic Party is right and the Republican Party is wrong. This is one of those very, very few things. Okay? If you believe in individual liberty, if you believe in the right to keep and bear arms, it logically follows that you believe in the legalization of cannabis. And if you don't, you need to examine your belief system. Sha'carri Richardson is not the victim of racism. She's the victim of her own bad choices. Okay? I mentioned last time are we supposed to suspend not only federal law, but also most likely the laws in her home state. I don't even know what state she's from. Probably from a state where marijuana is still illegal under state law. Are we supposed to suspend, in particular, the regulations of her chosen profession? There are literally millions of people out there in the United States who have to obey the rules of their professional organization or their profession. The rules have been agreed upon. You swore that you would uphold those rules when you were licensed to practice in this profession, or when you signed up for example, the American Olympic team. And why shouldn't you obey these rules? Why should an exception be carved out for you? Because you're black? I don't think so. I think the stories of Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte very clearly illustrate that Sha'carri Richardson is not the victim of racism. Okay? Michael Phelps, I'm sure you've heard of Michael Phelps. He earned about 1 million gold medals in swimming in the Olympics. Okay? Made man. Okay? $1 million man. Sponsorships out the wazoo. He was photographed taking a hit off of a bong at a party in the off season, and he got a 3-month suspension, not a 1-month suspension, like Sha'carri Richardson did. Also, Michael Phelps never tested positive for any banned substance. He just, admitted that he smoked pot for, a few times, and they slapped him with a 3-month suspension, and it was pretty much the end of his career. Sha'carri Richardson is unfortunate because her indiscretion occurred right before the Olympics. So the 1-month suspension that she has been saddled with includes the Olympics. And as you know, for most track and field athletes, most swimmers, just about everybody who doesn't play baseball, hockey, basketball, or football, the Olympics is the make or break of your career. Okay? Now let's talk about Ryan Lochte, okay? Ryan Lochte, much like Michael Phelps, was a great, gifted swimmer, okay? But he was laboring in the shadow of Michael Phelps, much like Scottie Pippen labored in the shadow of Michael Jordan, or Kevin Butler labored in the shadow of Walter Payton. Kevin Butler actually scored more points in his career. He was the place kicker for the Chicago Bears. Scored a lot of field goals, scored a lot of extra points, and they added up to more points in his career than than Walter Payton. But if you're not a Chicago Bears fan, you've probably never heard of Kevin Butler. Anyway, Ryan Lochte still had a pretty good career looking ahead of him, and he was at the Olympics in Brazil. He and a couple of his teammates were out drinking, and on the way back to the athletes' dormitory, they decided to stop and relieve themselves at a gas station, and the gas station's restroom was locked. So they relieved themselves out in the bushes, like men are inclined to do when they're drunk. And they were accosted by 2 armed men who claimed that they were security guards and accused them of vandalizing the bathroom, which was locked. They never even entered it. And they demanded money. And Ryan Lochte and the other 2 athletes gave them money and went home for the evening, so to speak. They went back to the athletes' dormitory at the Olympic Village. Well, Ryan Lochte told his mom about it. Ryan Lochte's mom contacted a reporter, and then it was all over the headlines. And the state of Brazil, having spent billions of dollars to attract and then host the Olympics, really couldn't afford to have the image of, foreign athletes and tourists being preyed upon by armed robbers splattered all over the news. So they accused Ryan Lochte of filing a false police report. He never filed a police report until after he was pressured to do so. Well, Ryan Lochte lost all of his sponsorships. He was suspended for a total of 10 months. And when this bullshit story finally got to court in Brazil, the judge called it a bullshit story. USA Today quoted him. And finally the suspension was lifted. By that time, of course, much like Michael Phelps' career, Ryan Lochte's career was in smoldering ruins. Nobody accused the IOC of racism in either case. Of course, Ryan Lochte and Michael Phelps are both whiter than me. Sha'carri Richardson screams racism. Systemic racism institutional racism. Sorry, that just doesn't compare well with the cases of Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte. Next, I'd like to address the astronomical costs of a master's degree nowadays. You know, when I went to college, okay, I tried to. I'm from a working class family, and I was buying my own home already when I went to college, and consequently, I had to squeeze every quarter until the eagle screamed. I had to work a full-time job and go to class and study and still get good grades. Making the dean's list, graduating with a really nice GPA. Okay, here's how I did it, and emerged with only $4,000 in student loan debt. I spent my first couple of years in community colleges because all those, taxes that my parents had been paying all their lives had been funding those community colleges. And I got a pretty low tuition for my first 2 years of college. Then I transferred to a four-year university, and I went completely hog wild. You look at my transcripts, you can see that I was just doing a lot of stuff and getting more than my share of degrees. And I don't like to brag about it, but I got quite an education. And this was before the left-wing movement really took over our college campuses. Although there were already several left-wing college professors and a whole lot of left-wing students who had been there for 5 or 6 years and changed their majors 3 or 4 times and were racking up what seemed to be at the time an astronomical amount of debt, $30,000 or $40,000. Now the Wall Street Journal has published a story saying that the typical graduate of Columbia University's master's program in film has $181,000 of student loan debt. And their median income is under $30,000 a year. And they're supposed to move to Southern California, the most outrageous rental market in the United States, support themselves on $30,000 a year, and break into the film industry as directors and producers. As you may imagine, this is absolutely ridiculous unless these kids are super gifted, somebody like George Lucas or Steven Spielberg. They're never going to make it. They're never going to make it. People in academia who are selling you this pie-in-the-sky dream about how your master's degree is going to be your ticket to the upper middle class, your ticket to stardom. I'm sorry. For 90% of these majors, it ain't going to work out that way. Just like everything else, you either have to be well connected or you have to be truly gifted to succeed in your chosen profession and achieve that stellar level of income and prestige. It just doesn't work out the way that the Admissions and Records Office portrays it. And if there were in any other line of work, knowing that what they're selling is not going to produce the wealth and riches that they're claiming, they'd probably be held in prison. I'm supposed to be defending academia, after all. They call me the professor, not for nothing. But the entire education system in the United States has to be completely torn down and rebuilt, in my opinion. It's become too infested with ideological screwballs and useless classes, useless majors, useless degrees. Gender studies, African American studies, queer studies, art history. Well, you know, there is a place for art history at an art museum, at a museum, but the demand for people with art history degrees is super, super small. Okay, that's about all I have for this evening. If you're going to go to college, major in engineering, pre-law, pre-medicine, or something else that is actually going to make you some money, don't major in queer studies, please. You will not get a job. You will be stuck with $180,000 in debt for the rest of your life. And you'll be making coffee at Starbucks for minimum wage. That's about all I have for this evening. If you like what you hear, please give me a thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment or two below if you like, and share this with your conservative friends on Facebook and Telegram and Instagram, Rumble, BitChute, wherever you choose. I'll keep making these videos and spreading the truth as I understand it.